Welcome back to our podcast series all about club sports. Now, today we're going to talk about exactly what to do when the season is over, right? Mm-hmm. How can you prepare to be your best self for the next season, and what things should you actually focus on and work on?
Mm-hmm. Agreed. So what gets us all in trouble, and this isn't just in exercise and sports, it's all areas of life, we're afraid to take constructive criticism, right? We have to be a little humble. And we have to be transparent with ourselves or allow somebody to be transparent with us. And the most critical time to do that is as soon as your season's done. So no better time than when you finish your summer tournaments and it's June or July, depending upon age group. Talk to your coach, evaluate yourself, and think about your fitness. What were the things that got in the way of you having a successful spring season and tournament season? So I look at it as those three things that I just mentioned. Number one, look at yourself. Like, look in the mirror when you get home and make a list. Get out paper. It's fresh in your head. And that's where you write down, what were my weaknesses? What did I really excel at this year? Was there somebody playing ahead of me that I'm trying to beat out on my own team? What skills did they have that I didn't? Were they more conditioned? Were they faster? Were they more aggressive? Right? Make your list, do your self-eval, your after-action report. Right? Next thing you're going to do is go talk to your coach. Coaches love to help their athletes, but a lot of times we get in a situation where coaches feel like that feedback isn't received well, whether it's from kids, whether it's from parents, right? Whether it's the industry's kind of created this. I want feedback for my kid, right? I want feedback for me. What, can I be a better parent on the sideline, right? Give me feedback and I'll change. So if we can be a little humble about that and immediately go to your coach after, shoot him an email, him or her, and get some detail-oriented advice from them so you can start the next week or whenever you're ready to rock to start working on your skill set that needs to be improved.
Yeah, but I think you hit it on the head. So in business, I'm always looking for same thing you said, after action report, right? So I just had a presentation, I just had a phone call, I just had a big meeting, like whatever that thing is that I just did, I want to look at it and say, all right, what did I do really well? What could I have done better? I would love anyone in the audience to tell me, right? Maybe that's my coach or a friend or someone. But I think everyone's afraid to be honest. And I think there's a lot of emotion in club sports. There's a lot of emotion in kids,
Oh my gosh,
you know,
yes.
and I know it's a delicate balance because, you know, when Ellie was really young, she played soccer and she would run the field the entire time. She would always score. And finally someone came over to her and said, hey, I need you to stop scoring. Like, you need to pass the ball to other people. And however she took that in, she became a different player forever in soccer. She's like, it was weird. And I can trace it back to that moment in time. Like from that conversation, it was different. So give criticism, but also keep in mind how old the child is.
Correct.
But the older they get, the more they can take the real stuff, right? So like 9th and 10th graders, they can kind of take it now. Like you tell them what they need to do, they're like, I got it. And they can mentally, their maturity's at a point where they can kind of embrace it and they can get after it. But here I am now at the time of this video, we're about a month past our seasons. Neither of my club teams have had after action reviews with either of my kids or with the parents or anything. And I think that would be just a very logical, you finish your season, everyone get on my calendar, let's talk. And maybe it's with the parent, maybe it's with the kid, but I think everyone needs to know that criticism, that here's what you do great, here's what you can do better. But not only here's what you can do better, like you need to be better at shooting with your left hand. You need to be more aggressive at going in. There's a lot of these like empty things that you hear, and then there's not a lot of specific guidance after. And so you need to do this better, but in order to do that better, you need to do this. I'm going to give you these 3 exercises. I'm going to have you talk to a fitness person. You should check out either this place or this place. They teach kids how to move their body level. Like there's stuff that goes with it.
There's a resource.
Yeah.
There's a solution.
Right.
So my daughter's youth developmental coach within the organization has online videos, and she does send them out to the younger kids. I don't know if everybody gets them, but I know at least from our team's perspective, wall ball and technique, like detail oriented. She's talking about it, not just get on the wall. It's very helpful for us. And then it's not me saying it. And, you know, a lot of times it's over my pay grade too, right? Lacrosse isn't my thing. I'm the body guy. But it's directly to my daughter. So now this is your coach speaking to you through a video. It's a great resource to do. So I was very thankful for that too. But the third piece here too is fitness and biomechanics. We'll put those all in one, right? How many kids are beat up and sore after the season? Lacrosse club season lasts forever, and they're physically and mentally burned out, right?
Yep.
Probably prior to the most important time, you could argue, which is the tournament season.
Yeah.
Right? So you need to do a kind of a regroup on what hurts right now. What's tired? Did I lose my legs a couple weeks ago? Do I have IT band flare up? Do I have plantar fasciitis? Is my low back sore? And figure out the whys. And I'm not saying that the kid can figure that out, and most parents can't figure that out. That's not their job. But go see a professional if you've got a ton of aches and pains, right? A little shameless plug for me, but a PT, right? Trainer in your area, somebody maybe that works with your club. But an eval for your mechanics for running, change of direction, shooting, balance, core strength. I mean, you can go really deep on that, and follow us in a future video. We'll talk about all this stuff. But that's a huge piece of it, because the skill is only as effective as the body behind it. Mm-hmm. And if we're not addressing those needs going into the off season, you've really kind of missed a big component of this.
So like one of your superpowers is actually doing that for people, right? Being able to see. So when I was back in my Ironman days, I had a swim coach, and he kept saying, you need to raise your left arm up more. But that was the only advice that he gave. Mm-hmm. Well, the first day I met you were just like, well, yeah, you have no shoulder mobility.
Like, how's your hair look so good when you can't even reach up the comb?
I got it right. So, but the point behind that was, of course you're not a good swimmer. Mm-hmm. Of course you don't have that, because you have this limitation. Yep. And I think that's the part that a lot of people fail to take that next step. You need to get better at X, but in order to get better at X, you need to do A, B, and C for a little while to then do D, E, and F. So that you can be great at X, Y, and Z.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah. It's point A to point B. Well, in the fitness component, another big one that I want to talk about today, we hear from coaches a lot too, and I'm not putting this on coaches that it's their job to train this, but they'll give parents feedback or kids feedback. You need to be in better shape, or you need to just get faster. Mm-hmm. So what do kids do? They go out and they run. Now, running easy around the neighborhood versus running 10-yard sprints versus doing shuttle repeats, they all train completely different things. Some might totally miss the goal that kid has for themselves, or the coach has a need for that kid, right? So the off season is a critical time to address your weaknesses. And a lot of times once you get started with lacrosse and we're playing so many games and we're practicing so much, you have conditioning 3 to 4 days a week. You're playing endless games. You're running all over the field. Speed is developed through producing force, right, which is a weight training response, doing plyometrics, and running when you're not tired. Running as hard as you can for shorter durations, mm-hmm. right? That's speed. And we don't ever give ourselves time to do that. So the off season is a critical time. If speed is really a factor for you, you have to dive in July, August, September. You can't wait until the spring and think you're just going to get faster. Now, if you're an athlete that might be gifted and pretty fast at a young age, but a couple transitions and you're gassed, it's a great time to build a really good aerobic base in the off season. Low stress, but get some mileage in. Like, just get more active and build a good foundation with your cardiorespiratory fitness, so that's not a limiting factor later on.
Would you not always have a cardio base? So let's say the lacrosse season mm-hmm. is going to go from March to July. Mm-hmm. And let's say that's your sport. Wouldn't you just do a big cardio base either way through the winter, and then just lean into speed mm-hmm. and strength in February? Or is that just too hard to do because all these other kids are also multi-sports, and then they have a fall season, right? They have November tournaments and training through September, October.
So you want to think about, by March, you're already fast, you're already conditioned, right? Your base is there. You can fine tune later, and you're already strong and agile. Like mm-hmm. you've done all that work prior. Now, what we're doing in spring season and all the way through June is we're trying to manage that. And if we get detailed, we can have little phases within. We're maintaining weight training. We're doing a little bit of speed, maybe once a week. And we're doing some extra conditioning depending upon how much you do at club practices. But we're kind of maintaining and then peaking for tournament season or mm-hmm. end of regular season for playoffs, right? The base should be built in the summer, maybe fall.
Got it.
And then we build up in the winter with some more interval work. And then we get into like the preseason frantic time for every kid. My conditioning test is coming up in end of February, and everybody's running shuttles 7 days a week, and they all get hurt. It only takes 6 weeks.
We've seen so much of that.
Yeah, it takes 6 weeks to tune up your anaerobic system for high intensity stuff. It takes half a year to tune up your aerobic system. So if you haven't already started coming off last year, you're already late for the aerobic part.
Now, why is it, this might be a little tangent, but I experienced a lot of kids getting, deconditioned. Yeah. Throughout the lacrosse season. Like I saw kids come out as ballers, and at the end of I would put my kid in that category for a little bit, where all of a sudden at the end of the season, it's like, wow, you actually lost a little bit.
Yeah. So quick comparison, this could be a whole episode, but quick comparison. Let's say you have first line midi, and then you've got your sixth defender on the team. How much time are they running in a week in games, right? Where the defender's not playing at all. The midi's playing most of the game depending upon the coaching strategy, right? So it's a huge conditioning stimulus.
Yeah, even if you're a backup midi.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
And you get 5 minutes in a game, the other one had 45 minutes.
100%.
And they're running a whole bunch and you're not.
Huge difference. So you need to really look at your week and say, how much more work are they doing than I'm doing?
Almost like intensity, like tracking intensity hours.
Heart rate, time at heart rate, mileage. You can track all that stuff with all the GPS stuff now too. It'd be pretty fascinating to do with some of these high school kids and even younger. But you have to look at that. That's apples and oranges. Like totally different on the same team with the same schedule. So that person that isn't playing as much, what you're trying to do is fight for a spot on the team to make an impact later in the season, right? Or when everybody else is done, they've lost their legs, they're exhausted, they're beat up. Can you be an asset now because you've been training your butt off through the season with additional work? So you're peaking for playoffs. Everybody else is just trying to hang in and recover. So great question.
So the next thing we can focus on is nutrition strategies. Yep. So a lot of people, at least in my circle, now I'm a little bit of a nut when it comes to fitness and nutrition and health. And a lot of people are starting to ask about diets and you and I have had countless discussions about the food under the tent, right? On game days and just how awful most all of it is. But everything down to hydration strategies, on game day. But what do you use during training? But then how do you just live your regular life? So this could be a good time to just, when you don't have a lot of practices, you don't have a full committed schedule, everyone's home, right? Your kids are kind of around, you can just like have a reset. So speak to that a little bit. Like what are some tips you could give families? And I would put more of this on the parents, right? I think
100%.
Yes, your kid has to buy it, but your kid can mostly only eat what you buy and what you create. Yeah. So I think that's a big part where parents could kind of dial in, okay, how do we become a more healthy family, keeping fitness in mind?
And I think to touch on that, when you said kids can only eat whatever the parents provide until a certain age, and then they're driving around and then they have a couple bucks and then they're making decisions that are
based on habit, right? We've talked about this. It becomes like a lot of parents love to say, especially when the tents, when they have nothing but cookies and brownies and whatever in between games, they'll be like, they're just kids, right? But then you'll just burn it off, you're a kid. And then we all know as parents, once you get a little older, you can't just eat whatever you want to eat. Like it doesn't work that way. Your body changes. And everyone talks about, what do they call it? The freshman 15 or whatever that is. A lot of people think it's alcohol. Yep. I think it's probably more food. Yeah. It's more I'm on my own. I'm used to eating all this crap. I'm going to just keep eating all this crap. And I'm going to actually do a little bit less because I'm in college and doing whatever. I'm not working out as much, maybe, unless you're an athlete, and then bam, the weight comes. So these things that we how we treat our kids to feed themselves, right? And the diet that we help them shape becomes a lifelong habit.
Yeah, it's critical at a young age, and it doesn't even need to take on any of those words like diet or we're going to cut weight or we're going to count calories, right? I'm not pinging you on that because I know what you're talking about, right? But we're not talking about diet in a way of how are we going to do the next 30 days? It's how are we going to eat for health and optimal performance? And when we look at it from a parent perspective, how much time do we spend in the car driving to practices and tournaments? How much money can you potentially invest in gear and tournaments and team fees? Why is the thing that matters arguably the most always the lowest on the priority list? Right. And that's what you're eating on a daily basis. So the question that I get most in work when it comes to food and it comes to youth athletes is, can you give us a list of like good supplements, or what's a pregame snack, or what should we be doing for hydration during games? Like, you earn the ability to ask those questions, me included, right? I'm not saying this like I'm cocky, but like me as a parent included, I'm not even allowed to ask those things if we haven't nailed a healthy breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Because if we don't have a solid foundation of whole foods, right, and not the grocery store, but like whole foods that you can actually identify and they're not processed, and we don't have diversity in micronutrients. So are we getting vitamins and minerals from our foods, or are we just eating the same 3 ingredients formed into different shaped objects like muffins, waffles, cereal? It's all the same stuff, right? So if we don't have whole foods, we don't understand a little bit about portion, right? Not go crazy, but understand more is extra fuel. Do we need that or not, right? And then are we prioritizing protein? It's the building block of muscle. It helps muscular recovery. It helps bring your legs back the day after a big practice and game. It helps us build lean tissue and just have it improve its health, right, in our body. So we can deal with storage. Now I'm getting a little deep here, but deal with storage of carbohydrate. And what do kids eat the most of? What do we as Americans eat the most of? Processed carbohydrate snacks full of sugar because they're in packages and they're easy. So like you said, when you finish tournament season, you've been doing nothing but eating pre-workout and post-workout snacks. And if you have 5-6 club games on a weekend, you just did that 6 times. You just had 12 carbohydrate, sugar-laden snacks. And I'm not saying it's bad, but if you have no foundation of nutrition, it's really bad.
Yeah.
So great time after season is to reestablish, like you said, healthy eating plans of prioritize your protein, get your diverse food groups, right? Cut down on the sugar, cut down on the post-workout meals and all those snacks that we've been eating for 3-4 months, and reestablish some healthy patterns or establish them for the first time. And as parents, we're not educated with that in school. So if you truly don't know what's good and what's bad, really reach out to someone that can help.
Yeah.
I mean, you're doing yourself and your kid a favor, not just for that year and that season, but for a lifetime. And there are lots of people that can provide answers on that stuff. It's the biggest thing you can do as a parent, I think, for your kids.
And then obviously we'll do an episode on that too, because I think you probably have your nutrition dialed in better than most anyone I know. But we've adopted many of your philosophies. And now, we just went to the grocery store the other day and we tried looking for certain things. Like Lil is crazy about seed oils right now, and we can't buy anything with seed oils or she's not going to eat it. But it's like, I agree with the methodology, right?
Yeah.
So it took us a lot longer to grocery shop. And what I learned is you just can't buy packaged foods. But then the question is, if you can't buy packaged foods in today's manic lifestyle, how do you still eat healthy? That'll be an episode. We'll do that because there's an affordable and a fast way of doing it. And everyone I think thinks like, oh my God, I don't want to make all this stuff. It takes too long. It actually doesn't if you do it the right way.
100% agree.
All right. So the next thing that I've actually enjoyed, Ryan, you have both my girls on a training regimen. You use Training Peaks, and then we have Train Heroic. We don't get into the gym too much. Just schedules are crazy with the one-on-ones, but I've got the stuff at the house. But tell the importance of, now granted, it's probably more the importance 12 months out of the year, but specifically for right now, like what should kids be doing and how should maybe a weight plan or some type of strength training be a part of that plan?
Yeah, great question. So one of the mistakes that we make when we hear your kid needs to get stronger, right? If you leave that up to the kid, up to the athlete, they're probably going to wind up going down the street to Gold's Gym and they're grabbing dumbbells and they're doing, if it's a high school boy, bench press and curls, right? And we're done. And those are probably the least important areas that you need development for the game of lacrosse, right? So what is strength training good for? Why do your daughters do it, right? I mean, one's not even in high school. Why are we lifting weights? That's crazy, right? That's what we hear all the time, or we heard it a decade ago. So we want to think of resistance training, number one, as a way to learn how to move optimally. So resistance training is just doing movements with external load. That's all it is, right? It can be a band, it can be body weight, it can be a dumbbell. And we use resistance training to improve our movement efficiency, we'll call it. So if we have an athlete that's sprinting and they're running down the field as hard as they can, they need to move a certain way to deliver force to the ground. We can learn that and regressions of that and kind of build a platform up through strength training. And we use those exercises to build a really good platform. So when, your daughter was 10 and she was weight training, she's a heck of a lot easier to train now when she's able to handle load as a 13, 14, 15-year-old because she's been doing this stuff for 3, 4, 5 years.
Not only that, so Ellie didn't do a lot of strength training. Through this podcast, you'll learn the differences. My 2 daughters, she's dialed in right now. She's amazing. And she's all in everything, which is great to see. But when she was younger, it was a little bit of a hands-off kind of thing. So Lil's been doing it for, let's say 3.5 or so years, but her form is now perfect. Like she's from a young age, she's learned how to move properly and then learned how to do the strength training properly. Ellie goes to high school and then they have weight training day one day. And next thing you know, they're max squatting. And then she had a sore back for 3 months. But that's the stuff kids do when you say get strong.
Yeah, exactly. So number one is use it as a movement tool. And it sets you up with a good foundation for success later, right? When the body can handle load, you can load it, ready. We don't need to teach. We've already taught. We're ready for higher level stuff, right? So we're moving up to 201. Number two is it builds tissue resiliency. I'll use that word. So resistance training, when done specific to the activities you're doing in your sport, it is going to make it more difficult to get injured, right? It's going to reduce our risk of our common muscle strains. If we have strength, if we have resiliency, we have mobility, we have range of motion, and we've been working on all these things all year, or multiple years stacking that on one another, that athlete, I don't want to use the term bulletproof, but they're getting closer to it, right? They can handle a lot more load. If you have an athlete that hasn't done anything for 3 months and they step into long practices, I'm not betting on them, right? Their risk for injury is going to be a lot higher.
Yeah.
And our number three is force production, right? That's what we think of. We think of muscles as like size and strength. So force production is what we need to get fast. It's not just running the sprints, right? I need power delivery to the ground. I need power delivery to the stick. I need core stability. I need lower body strength, right? We need some upper body strength to hold off an opponent. So if we're able to produce force in the specific patterns that are in the sport, then you're just going to be performing at a much higher level.
Yeah. And my kids are starting to see that. Like they now get, like when they do a lat on a ball, right? Or dumbbell curl.
Dumbbell row.
Yeah, dumbbell row.
You were doing curls?
Yeah, dumbbell curls on a ball. But they get it. They get like, oh, that's the rotation of, and they start drawing connections of the exercise to the game.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a big important thing.
So my daughter, Fallon, she's 10 years old and she's been doing TRX rows now for a year or two. And one of the big deficiencies she's working out of in her shot, right? She just picked the sport up a year and a half, 2 years ago, is pulling with her bottom hand, right? She's heavy on the push. So we're working on cleaning that up. But we got into a single arm row, kind of getting her in a specific pattern that looks just like a shot yesterday with some bands. And she made the connection. Light bulb went off. She's like, oh, Dad, I get it now. That's why you've been having me do all these rows. Like, totally. If you feel that natural motion over and over and over again, we can use it as a cue now. So when I work with boys and girls that are out on the field and we're teaching defensive movement patterns and angles and change of direction, how hard is it to get them to play low and change direction with low hips and center of gravity and step the right way when they don't know what a squat is? I can't speak the same language, but if I've worked with them in the weight room for a couple months, it's easy. We already know the patterns. We just now have to do it fast on the field.
Yeah. Get a squat position, right? Athletic position. Bam.
Let's go.
You're like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a game changer.
All right. And the last one that we'll talk about today is going to be skill development, right? So obviously if you had an after action report and you kind of knew those things that you need to get better on, like how do you focus and how do you know what to do, right, for that skill development? Like, what's the next step, right? It's get better at.
Yeah.
Well, then you have to get better at that thing. What does that mean?
Yeah. So I think you need resources. You need the person to teach you what am I actually getting better at and how to be detail oriented in it. And we talk about sport specificity, right, as a thing at all ages. And I think we overkill that. Like a 10-year-old, do you know where you're going to be playing? What part of the field you're going to be playing on when you're 18?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? How many kids, like from the boys' side, get to college and they're playing D-Midi? Everybody's playing D-Midi, right? You better know how to move your feet defensively. Why did you just work on shooting in the backyard for 10 years? So I think number one, we need to make sure that we're diverse, especially at the earlier ages. But really, I mean, I'm not a coach, but seeing the big picture, right, from this perspective, diversity in movement with skill, just like diversity in movement in on-field movement patterns is key at early ages. Do everything.
Yeah.
And then as you do everything, get your after action report from your coach, and then pick the summer to really hone in on one or two weaknesses and get rid of them. Like when you show up in September, it's not a weakness. It's gone. I did that growing up playing hoops. Every year I would pick that one thing, like really struggling with left hand ball handling, right? Well, I'm not going to be playing point guard this year unless I get my left hand ready to rock. So this summer, I'm going to dedicate it to that. You still shoot, you still do some other things, but that's my main focus, right? That's a big piece. You got to hammer down on those weaknesses. And how many kids are afraid to do that? because they don't want to have a weakness. So they don't talk about it. When we talk about what's your strength and weakness in here, when we have kids coming in that want to get in better shape for sports, it's like pulling teeth. Like volunteer that. Get it out. Let's start working on it. It's
I wish the weaknesses would be celebrated.
Yeah.
Like I really wish it would be like, no, I'm not good at this, and laugh about it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I really suck at whatever
Let's
that thing is. And embrace it and like
Correct.
own it, wear it as like a badge of honor. Like
100%.
This is so, and I think if people did that, people being kids, adults, if everyone more openly talked about what we're not good at instead of what we're good at, you can then celebrate the things that you conquer.
Yeah.
And we're also missing that celebration. Like when you and I do some of the races that we do and we have these big wins, like my biggest win in racing was arguably Whiteface. That was my worst performance ever. But what I took out of that was something that I've carried forward now for every race. Like I don't give up anymore. Like I'm not going to give up because that thing taught me that I don't have to and that I can overcome it.
And if you didn't fail and you weren't comfortable with failing forward, we talk about that term a lot, you wouldn't be in the place you're in right now.
Yeah. So like, my kids get frustrated when we uncover a skill development of something that they need to do to get better, and that they're going to own it and try to like take it away. And they're both really good at that right now. Over the last few years, if I said it, they'd want to rip my head off. Stop, Dad. You're always. But now they get that if they haven't done it 1,000 times perfectly, they can't complain about it.
Yeah.
And if it's a bad shot, it's like, I'm working on it. I'm expected to not do this well.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to keep doing it with a smile on my face.
Yeah.
And somehow bringing that out in your kids, bringing that out in your house, and celebrating the weaknesses, celebrating the things that you want to conquer and do better with.
I'm going to tie that into things we've already talked about real quick to summarize this today. So we talked about our after action report, talking to your coach. We talked about nutrition, strength training, and skill development, right? We are, as a society, afraid to be sad. So when the season's over, everybody says, great job, it was a great season. Really? Everyone had a great season on every team on the planet. Like there are a lot of seasons that weren't great. It's okay to say that. It's okay to say, all right, we got to get back to we got to grind. We need to come up with our list. Here are our objectives for the off season. Girls, boys, we're going to go work on this stuff on your own. I'll provide some resources. Go get it done. Take care of your fitness. Here's a resource. Go work on it. Come back ready to grind. Everybody accepts it. Coach accepts it. Parents accept it. Kids accept it. So instead of the nutrition piece, I got to hammer this one more time. We give food that tastes great all the time, which does what to young kids? It puts smiles on their face immediately. But those smiles only last 30 seconds, right? And this drives me nuts. Smiles that last months are from overcoming adversity, sacrificing, working really hard, and getting better the next year. So when that team comes back that's taken advantage of the summer and the fall, and then they have success the next year because they've taken the hard, longer route and done the work, that smile on the face from satisfaction from the grind lasts the entire season. And like, that's what makes sports. And that's what we miss. Drives me nuts. Sorry to go on that tangent.
No, that was awesome.
Nice.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. We're going to talk more about all these topics individually because I think each of them are very important, not only for your child in sports, but as a parent, understanding how to parent your child. And if you're working on something yourself, a race, running, trying to get into fitness, like there's a lot of this that where you can tie into having just a healthy family, you included, parent, right? Not just your child.
Yeah,
a lot of this is youth sports, but I think we could all put a mirror out and talk about all these things that we tell our kids. We should probably do ourselves as parents and as coaches and lead by example. And celebrate all those same wins, right? And let your kids see you vulnerable. Like let your kid hear, oh, I did awful, and say it with a smile. Like that's what my kids, I think, remember about some of my races. Like, how'd you do today? I was like, it was awful.
Yeah.
And I say it just like that. I'm like, oh my God, let me tell you about this part. I fell down and had cramps. I had the worst time ever.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm like, no, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
The first thing they ask me after we race is, Dad, did you win? I've yet to say yes.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, you got to stop asking me that question, buddy. There are other ways to evaluate. But it's great. It's okay to be comfortable, right? Just failing forward. And I think that's what this is all about. So
awesome.
Cool.
Until next time.